This, without a doubt, will be one of the most intriguing cases that we have ever presented here on the channel, since it has an analysis of a series of specialists who were truly perplexed by the discovery made by Dr. Roger Leir. According to this doctor, whose discoveries were recorded by documentary filmmaker Jeremy Corbell, scientist Steve Coburn, and nanophysicist Chris Cooper, he would have supposedly removed 16 alien implants from patients throughout his career. Intense, huh? And this happened more than 6 years ago, when Dr. Roger Leir claims to have received a patient with a very curious case. But before we start, drop a like now at the start and come with me, because I'm Tiago Tadeo, and welcome to the Upside Down. The strange patient. It was a normal day at the hospital, and the doctor was working on call in the emergency room. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, a patient appeared saying he was feeling very ill. After examining him, Roger said he recognized the symptoms of a generalized infection. When the results of his test arrived, the doctor confirmed that there was some foreign element there in the boy that was affecting his body completely. What scared the doctor at the time was also recognizing that he also had symptoms of radiation contamination, something that didn't make any sense, right? The doctor questioned the patient as to whether or not he had come into contact with radioactive elements unintentionally in the last few weeks, of course. Coincidentally, at the time, he had a device with a radiation sensor at hand that he had borrowed from a colleague at the university for one of his personal projects. So, when he brought the equipment closer to the patient, he was instantly scared because he was emitting a kind of electromagnetic radiation that could be responsible for his symptoms. The doctor says he would have allegedly moved the equipment around the boy's body until he found the focus of the radiation, from where he extracted the chip, which was also the cause of the inflammation in the patient's body. At the time, he didn't question much about imagining that the young man could have had a biohacking implant inserted on a perhaps even illegal clinic and ended up developing an infection. However, when questioning the patient, who said he had never had such a procedure, and when looking at the chip up close, Dr. Roger Leir was really confused. Special help. After finding the strange equipment on the patient's body, Dr. Roger Leir went to his colleague, who lent him the radiation sensor to confirm that he had not used the equipment in the wrong way. It was at this time that scientist Stephen Colburn first came into contact with the supposed alien chip. When analyzing it, the scientist was impressed because it didn't look like anything he had studied until that moment. It would take a long time for him to get more concrete data on the chip. However, at that time, he lent the equipment to the doctor, who was also accompanied by the independent documentary filmmaker Jeremy Corbell, to continue his studies on this mysterious chip, right? Other patients. Over the next few months, when Steve's research was slowly advancing, Dr. Roger Leir reportedly continued to analyze his patients with the radiation sensor. After all, he had already found something, right? He did this on the pretext that a contamination could have happened in the city, and they were just checking to see if everything is okay. However, my dears, this is when things get even weirder. According to the doctor, in an interview of a few months, he found 16 more patients who fired the sensors, and believe it or not, they also had a similar chip implanted, but the vast majority of them had no reaction, unlike the boy's case. Thus, the doctor concludes that the first patient's response caused the chip to be exposed by chance, and now that he was actively looking for the chips, the amount of chips was much greater than he thought. Even so, taking into account the daily turnover of patients that the doctor had in those months, 16 people is not such an alarming number, but it is also not something that should be ignored, right? Results. After a series of analysis, it was concluded that the chip used nanotechnology and contained elements that were not listed in our periodic table, indicating that they could very well come from another solar system or even another universe, according to, of course, some theories. The chip, according to scientist Stephen Colburn, emits a kind of electromagnetic radiation that is harmless in most cases, But if the equipment is defective, it can be harmful to the patient, which must have happened with the first case he came into contact with. According to Steve, the radiation emitted by the first chip was much greater than what doctors found in others over time. He believes that this radiation could work as a kind of communication between the origin of the chip and the body of the implanted person, something that could be used to perhaps monitor or even control the victims. What is curious, according to the documentary recorded by Dr. Lear, is that the vast majority of patients who contained the chip had stories of strange dreams, or even confirmed reports of abduction. According to the composition of the material present in this chip made by Stephen Colburn, the chip is made up of about 36 elements, most of which are not found on our planet. Some are of our solar system, and others are completely unknown. Third point of view. In disbelief at their discovery, they took the information to nanophysicist Chris Cooper, who spent a few weeks looking at the data collected by the doctor and scientist, as well as doing his own test on the chip. According to Chris Cooper, if the chip is real, it would definitely be an object that was forged outside our solar system. In his own words, "There's nothing I can think of that explains why this man would have a variety of elements of this kind of chip implanted in his person." He claims that this chip is a piece of equipment with the highest concentration of the varied elements he had ever seen. Something that is certainly impossible to manufacture with the technology we have on Earth today. Patient 17. In the documentary, which was titled Patient 17, they would showcase the research and discussions about the supposed chip with alien technology, and would begin to breathe some fresh air into the discussion. In the footage, they presented the information that I brought in the video here, along with what would be the recording of the chip removal surgery of the 17th patient, or what would be the supposed proof that everything was true. The documentary got its name precisely because of the surgery, well, in which the chip was found, so they put the name of Patient 17 on the documentary and also recorded the act of removal of the chip. Case supporters. After the findings made by those involved were documented, Patient 17 came to light. The public reacted in very different ways. Some people didn't really care about the case, because if this is really happening under the influence of a civilization outside of our own solar system, there's not much we can do about it, except, I don't know, maybe even accept it. There are also those who disbelieve the claims made by those involved, who could be just looking for a way to promote themselves in the field of ufology, and perhaps achieve notoriety, since this could easily be seen as their merit for their impressive discoveries, and of course, give them a certain notoriety. Right, that's just one theory. But there are still those who defend and somehow try to continue the discoveries made by them, thus creating a theory that would unify ufology around this subtle invasion. The implants. 2 decades after this research began, a theory centered its idea on a thesis there that would theoretically unify all of ufology. According to this idea, our universe would be inhabited by civilizations infinitely more advanced than ours, which traveled to the developing solar systems to accompany or even spur the development of intelligent life. These aliens would come to Earth, where they would abduct selected people and implant them with a chip, which would allow them to do a lot of things, from monitoring vital signs and positionings, to maybe even implanting ideas, memories, dreams in their minds, or controlling the movements of their bodies. Oh guys, with our technological inferiority when compared to these societies that came from outside our solar system, we are not in a position to understand exactly what the purpose of chips would be. So, there are some theories about what they could do. Analysis, the neutral ending. The milder idea would be that the chips would have the intent to analyze the vital signs and the progression of the organism of human beings, collecting data that could be important for the research of that species itself, So, their relationship with humanity would be neutral, with us humans being more of an object of interest there for study, like a human being observing animals in nature to better understand their species, how they behave, how they eat, these things, you know? Is it possible that they're doing this to us? Rapture, the good ending. There are those who believe that the chips are good and work like a kind of rapture, where human beings who were selected for their qualities would be marked with the chip, which has the ability to transmit their consciousness through space, where then they would be reincarnated as a citizen of that society. However, guys, if we have an extremely developed society capable of exploring our entire galaxy, a good way to select good citizens would be to follow developing societies and extract the most important minds from there. But not everyone imagines that this ending could be happy, since you could wake up in a more complicated life than you can imagine. Targets, the bad ending. There is also a theoretical front on this case that believes that the chips could be a kind of marking that could represent something, a possible, invasion maybe. The implanted people would be targets that have been selected over the years, and that would be picked up or even pew-pew during the attack. Of course, all these theories are very speculative. They are theories, right? Especially with our current technological developments, humanity is unable to understand if it wants all the materials that make up the technology. So, speculating its purpose would be as precise as guessing where the needle is inside the haystack without entering it, you see? What that represents? Well, as I said, everything is still very uncertain, because although we have 3 well-known names, there are still very few witnesses. It is something very different from the case I presented to you recently about the appearance of 21 UFOs over the Brazilian airspace. Here, the number of witnesses is much lower, and the footage is considered inconclusive by many people. So it's not meant for you to be alarmed and say, I don't know, my God, the body chip, maybe I have it. It's quite unlikely that you have something in you, you see? Since in their own research, the proportion of implanted people is very small in relation to the overall population. The most grounded theory. There are also those who have a theory more down to earth, which believes that the chip is actually a human technology developed by the government itself, using minerals that NASA would have extracted from asteroid fragments. Well, I know, it may seem down to earth, but even so, it's beyond hallucinogenic, right? But they're theories, guys. Well, even though it's not something that happens every day, these kinds of people thinking this kind of things, it's relatively common to find asteroids from other solar systems circling ours. The meteor responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs came from outside here, right? In this theory, the chip would actually be some technology there to secretly be watching people's lives, something that also makes no sense. But guys, it's either that or it's really aliens. There's nowhere to run from here. But I want to know, with all the information I've given you, what do you believe about these chips? Because at least it must have been that little flea behind your ear, right? Guys, this video is ending here. I hope you are well. Drop a like, leave a comment, and we'll see each other in the next one. Peace.